Welcome, Innerspace Surfer. Today's episode is the first in an ongoing series called the Soul-Centric Business Spotlight. I can't wait to introduce you to an amazing businesswoman, personal friend, and founder of Phoenix-based Soul Carrier. Soul Carrier was founded in 2011 by designer Jennifer Boonlorn. Raised in Phoenix, Arizona, Jenn graduated from Arizona State University with a degree in business with the goal of becoming a lawyer. After losing both of her parents in a family car accident when she was a senior in college, she found it imperative to rethink her future path. Moments before the accident, her mother said, "Where do you want to go?" This became a mantra pumping through her veins, motivating her to tune out the noise, follow her heart, and forge her own path. She so desperately wanted to fulfill her father's dream to be a lawyer, but her heart was with the arts. Jennifer relocated to New York City to pursue a career in the fashion industry. Followed by an unparalleled education at Parsons, the new school for design, she worked alongside fashion icons Oscar de la Renta and Henry Bendel. In 2012, Jenn was asked to create a piece of art for the grand opening of Barney's New York at Scottsdale Fashion Square. It was at that moment she was able to turn her passion into realizing her dream of starting a high-end handbag company. That brand is Soul Carrier, a name inspired by Jenn's mindset to let your soul carry you wherever you want to go. So it's with great pleasure that I invite you to eavesdrop in on my convo with Jennifer Boonlorn. Hi!
This is so exciting.
It's so exciting. I'm so glad that you're here.
Thank you for having me.
It's so good to see you.
No, it's been years. And
too long.
Added years.
I know. But I see you online all the time. On the gram. I'm more on the gram than on the Facebooks. So
I agree. Me too.
Yeah. The energy feels a little lighter over there.
I got what you're saying.
It feels a little lighter. Yeah. Yes. And so I was trying to think, so Jenn and I met at the W.P. Carey School of Business at ASU. And so I couldn't remember the year. So I'm pretty sure I worked in the Center for Entrepreneurship in 17 and 18.
Okay.
Does that sound right?
It sounds right, because I remember having a couple of moments around 17 or 18, like, what am I doing? Which direction am I going? And Jill Harthoon suggested I go just kind of tap into ASU resources. So I talked to you, and there was someone else, maybe alumni relations. But I remember coming to campus like a handful of times, and then
I couldn't remember who sent you my way. Because also when I was a career coach at ASU, I really focused a lot with our MBA students on personal branding. And so you were like, oh, so-and-so referred me and they said you were really good with personal branding and you're in the Center for Entrepreneurship, and I didn't even know we had a Center for Entrepreneurship. So I remember being so captivated with what you already were doing. And to think that was just 4 years ago, like, you've come so far, and it's been so incredible to see your brand and you as a beautiful human evolve with it. And I think it's Susie Batiste, the founder and CEO of Poopery, who's always talking about your business is your spiritual journey, like business as a spiritual journey. And so I love that, because I feel like that's kind of that's all tied into your stuff. So I'm not going to take up any more time. I'm going to let you jump into your story, if you'll walk us through your story, and then we'll get more on the business side of it after you kind of tell us who you are, what you're about, where you're from.
I love it. Back to the quote from Susie, the potpourri girl. One of my best friends used to say to me, Jenn, the cap on Soul Carrier is going to be the cap on your own personal growth. So that where you tap out,
feel that.
Can't just... And I was
yes.
And I think we see a lot of companies that are successful and amazing, but the founder's personal life is like a mess. And I was like, no, if I need to clean up things in my one area, it's going to tie over to the other area.
Yes. I just was listening to a podcast with Blake, and I don't know if I'm going to pronounce it right. Mykoski from Tom's.
Yes.
Wow. And hearing how he really hit that whole existential crisis, because he was like, everyone thinks, you hear the stories of the founder who made all this money, and then they're going to go do all of this philanthropic work. He's like, but I was doing both at the same time. And then he still hit the existential wall of like, WTF.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, very interesting.
So interesting.
Especially being at the beginning of my journey with this and seeing where we'll have to schedule an appointment for 4 years from now.
Yeah,
we'll hop back on. You can interview me.
I love it.
Okay. Enough about that stuff.
Soul Carrier is my brand, and it's a line of, and I've got my babies here. It's a line
I
of
love it.
services, and I'll go into all of them. But it started, I've always been drawn to design and creativity. My dad was an architect, but growing up, he kind of was like, stay out of the design field. And he had these visions of me being a lawyer. So that was also planted in my head. And yet my natural tendencies were always towards fashion and design and anything creative.
And you grew up in Phoenix, and he was an architect in Phoenix.
He was an architect in Phoenix. So born and raised here, went off to ASU, did the ASU thing. And at that point I chose business, and I thought, well, I'll do business and then I'll, apply to law school when I graduate. And between my junior and senior year, my entire family was in a car accident, and that car accident took the lives of like both of my parents. And then they're gone. And I thought, I'm going to honor them by going to law school. And then there was a little part of me too that I wanted to, there was a lot of eyes on me and a lot of like, what's she going to do? And is she going to fall apart? And so I was like,
and eyes on you because your father was very,
I think my mother homeschooled us growing up. And that world tends to be, how do we say, very conservative and a little hovering parenting. My parents were amazing, and they weren't. They were the anomaly to that world. But some of my mom's friends are very like, shh. And so I think they're all watching. And I mean, junior in college, so I was like old enough to make it on my own, but still so much of life ahead of me that, you want that guidance and nurturing. But really, I was a young adult, but I was like, I'm going to show them. I'm going to show them, because I had friends saying like, you're going to become this crazy party girl, or you're going to become a Jesus freak. And it annoyed me.
Thanks for putting all that projection on you.
I was like, why are those the only two choices? And no, I'm going to be balanced in the middle. And so, but part of me was like, watch me in a like, I'm going to go to law school and become this prestigious attorney. And almost to like, I don't know, prove them wrong or show off. Kimmy, I took the LSATs multiple times at ASU and took all the prep courses, and I did not, my mind doesn't work that way. I didn't score well. I applied to ASU. I applied to Berkeley. I had a very, very close friend who will be part of my story later on, but he was an ASU student too, and we were all just super tight, and he was going off to Berkeley. I was like, well, if Brian's going to Berkeley, maybe I'll apply to Berkeley and we'll all just continue this college hangout thing. And Berkeley didn't think that's a good enough reason.
Right. My friends are coming. Can't I come?
Yeah. So I start kind of going back to what I love, which is fashion. I already had my degree from ASU, and MCC had a fashion program, and I thought, I'm going to dabble. So I took history of fashion, color theory.
And MCC is the community college.
Correct. Mesa Community College. And on the very first night, the leader of the program, Yvonne Bowling, was like, hey, this summer I'm taking a group of students to New York, like a 1-week tour of the fashion industry. Like, you should sign up. And I did. And oh my gosh, Kimmy, it was pure magic. So
you got bit by the bug.
Oh, my parents had taken me to New York, but then again, I'm going now, like I'm in my early 20s, and it's just like, wow, we toured Fashion Institute of Technology. I toured Parsons on my own. We met with designers and photographers and the guys who do the windows at Saks Fifth Avenue and hats. And it's just like, this is an industry. Like, it felt like candy, because I almost paralleled it to, if you're a young student or you're like, I want to go to Hollywood, and everyone's like, oh, that's cute. It's a total pipe dream, but that's cute. And so just like, I want to be in fashion. It's like, yeah, we're here in Phoenix, whatever. And then going there, it's like, oh no, this is a very real thing. This is a multi-billion-dollar industry. And you don't have to just be a designer or a buyer. There are a zillion opportunities in between. I mean, there's people who pick out colors and thread color, and then the people who build out the windows. And so it's like, really, there's anything. And so I applied to Parsons. I got in. There's another friend who also plays a part in my journey. His name is Andy Brown. My ASU's like family and friends were just phenomenal. Still to this day, they're some of my very best friends. And so
I just want to jump in because this show, we really want to enhance people owning and understanding intuition and their own intuitive voice. So at that point, like, was there a layer of that at that age for you where you were like, this is a yes, full on going into it? Did you trust that, or was there some wavering? What was that? What was that like?
Well, when I was in New York, it was like, I can't not do. The pull was so strong and I was so lit up. I came home and there was a little bit of like, being scared, being like, I'm going to leave the base that I know. My sister's here. My friends are here. I have a condo with roommates and I'm going to go to New York and not know anyone. This is scary.
Super scary.
I was watching, The Devil Wears Prada and Project Runway came out and I was like,
you're like, I'm going to go work with Heidi.
Sex in the City, all the things. Like,
yes.
In my kind of sphere.
Yeah.
And so I applied. I was bringing up the friend Andy Brown. He's a downtown Phoenix muralist and he had a t-shirt company. So I used his brand. You had to like analyze a brand, and I analyzed his brand and some of the cool marketing he did and use that in my essay, get into Parsons. And then the friend who I wanted to follow to Berkeley, he ended up in New York City at the United Nations. And we're like, oh my gosh, we should all be roommates. So it so helped that Brian was there because we kind of held each other's hands. It was like, all right,
sure,
we're in an apartment together. He had already lived in New York a year or two. He knew the city, and he's been like a brother to me, like since day one.
So you kind of did get to do that college experience again. Just wasn't in Berkeley, it was in NYC. Yeah, you landed where you were supposed to. Yeah,
and it was so fantastic. It was him and his boyfriend, and it was just the whole like. Living with the two gay guys, and they bought me my first pair of Manolo Blahnik. Like it was amazing. It was so amazing. And so I go to Parsons day one. I have this class with a professor, Tom Hanley, and he gives us a syllabus. And I'm like, are you kidding me? This is school. And it was, okay, you need to go to Saks Fifth Avenue and analyze each floor. Like, why is Marc Jacobs not on the same floor as Oscar de la Renta? And why is Tory Burch merchandised the way she is? I'm like, this is fun. And then we had to analyze magazines, and it was just pure candy.
And how exciting.
So fun.
And you were in your early 20s.
Early 20s. I was,
oh my gosh,
25, 26. So just the time to like be there and
all of that creative energy. And I'm sure that just like fed and inspired all the things in your brain.
Because I have nothing on the calendar, and I would just walk the city, and I'd be like, I'm going to go do all the fancy shops, or I'm going to go to the galleries, or I'm going to go down to Chinatown and look at like, the areas where there's buttons and the garment industry, and like whatever.
You were just a little sponge soaking it all up.
It was phenomenal. And so it was a 2-year program at Parsons. And then I stayed 2 more years, worked at Oscar de la Renta, American Eagle, like the clothing line in their pre-production, had an internship at Women's Wear Daily, straight up Devil Wears Prada.
You probably can't talk about that stuff, right? You signed what is it, a non-disclosure?
I found some of the people I've worked with on LinkedIn, and I was like, oh, I remember you. I remember how their very first day, they send me on a photo shoot out to New Jersey with these beautiful models, horses, like Ralph Lauren gowns, like all the things. And I'm dressing the model, and we put the shoes on, and she's like, oh, these don't fit me. Like I'm a size 10 and they're 7. And the creative director starts yelling at me, and I'm like, what do you want to do? I like cut her feet, cut the shoe, like the shoe a size that doesn't work. But
right.
moments like that, you're like, oh my God.
What did you do? How did you solve it?
That's a good question. I think the photographers.
She just went barefoot.
Yeah. But I mean, the egos and the like, make this work. And I'm like, sometimes there's no way to make it work.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
a size 10.
You're not fitting a 10 and a 7. Sorry. Yeah.
So had all those incredible experiences at the time, towards the end of my New York kind of journey. Gossip Girl was really, it was all the thing. And I actually have some of my creations behind me. So I started making headbands. Blair Waldorf, like wore all these, was one of the characters. Crazy, almost like fascinators. And so I would buy these expensive headbands and then be like, I can make this. I had my little hot glue gun. I show it to a professor at Parsons. He's like, this is amazing. You need to get this into Henry Bendel, which at the time was this amazing shop on Fifth Avenue, you know, next to Bergdorf Goodman's. Saks Fifth Avenue is down the way, and just very high end, not as big as Saks, but bigger than a boutique kind of too. So they have a casting call. It's called an open C for new designers. And if you can get in the door by 9 a.m., you have like 2 minutes. They love your stuff. They'll bring you back for an appointment, for an actual buying appointment. So I got in line probably like 4 a.m. in the morning. It's freezing out. I had like little buckets. Literally, I have to show you just because it's...
Please do.
And so I made these little buckets. And then I made all these like crazy headbands.
Oh, how cute.
Very, very Gossip Girl. Just
yes.
And the buyers are like, we love it. Done. Come back. I came back in a week. They bought the entire collection. And Cami, at this point, I'm just crafting it in my little West Village apartment, using my bed as a table because it's a tiny apartment. So I put a sheet over my bed and hot glue gun in the bed. And then I'm running around to form an LLC. So I'm going downtown New York. I'm trying to source everything. So honestly, I didn't have a business. It was just like, go. But I figured it out. I got the stuff made. They ordered, I still to this day don't know how I did it. They ordered probably like 200 pieces. Like I had all these styles.
And how fast were you supposed to turn those over? 200 in 2 weeks.
And I'm like, and I'm young, and I'm like, it's freaking Henry Bendel. You just jump and
do it.
So I did it. I got everything in there. They threw me a fashion show.
Wow.
Put my stuff on mannequins that faced Fifth Avenue. And I'm there. And then my sister's pregnant at the time with her first sport. And the very first day of the trunk show, she calls me and she's like, I'm going into labor. Blake is coming. And I'm like, oh. And in that moment, later that day, like there's this moment and it's just kind of frozen in my memory. I'm taking pictures of the mannequins facing Fifth Avenue and the reflection of a yellow taxi cab goes by. So I catch it in the window and I thought, it's time to go home. Graduated Parsons.
Yeah.
Incredible opportunities, met the top, fulfilled all my dreams. But I want to, being that my parents are gone, I want to see my niece grow up. So I make my way back to Phoenix, and that summer, Barney's was going to open at Scottsdale Fashion Square, and they had an event called The Mannequin is Our Muse, and in fact, ASU was part of it, Arizona Republic, a lot of restaurants.
The Mannequin what? What was it called?
Called The Mannequin is Our Muse.
Is Our Muse. Mm-hmm.
To take blank mannequins and then just be like, go get creative, do your art. So Arizona Republic covered theirs in newspaper, ASU students did education themed ones. Sam Fox did one, the restaurateur, Tammy Coe, the cupcake one. And again, everyone kind of did their genre mannequin. I collaborate, again, another ASU college friend, that group was so awesome. And his name was Bob Wilkinson. And he's an architect. And so I was like, hey, Bob, do you want to do a mannequin together? And he's like, yeah, that'd be fun. So we go to the dollar store and we find these 99 cents rag rugs, and we cover the mannequin. It's this weird, crazy statue, and she's on display at the mall, and it's, this event. And then the event's over, and Bob's like, that material's really cool. You should keep doing something with it. And I was like, yeah, it would be kind of cool to make a clutch or something. And so that is the catalyst of Soul Carrier, was rag rugs. Reached back out to that friend, Andy Brown, I had mentioned. he had moved back. He had some fashion industry experience in LA. I was like, Andy, I'm thinking of doing this, but I just kind of need help and some guidance. And so we got together and he was like, well, I think you should do a different brand than the headbands. It's a very different thing.
Sure.
And he suggested the word carrier for a name. He's like, I think you should just do something super clean and crisp. And I was like, I really like that, but it's missing something. It needs more. And earlier that day, I had had breakfast with another really dear friend who I often talk about, my friend Cameron. And we were talking about spiritual stuff and soul. And I was like, wait a minute, Andy, what if we put soul in front of carrier? I look it up. No one's taken it. I grabbed the domain.
What are the odds? Like now, for sure, that would have been scooped up.
Right?
There's young girls at fashion school right now looking that up, and they're like, Jen's already got it.
Totally, right? Totally. And so the fact that it was available, because you're like, okay, you're going to need a domain and a website and all the things. And I want it to all, I don't want to have to do like soulcarrier.net or something.
Right.
Like that. So grabbed it. Andy and I tried to find manufacturing here in Phoenix, which Phoenix is not manufacturing.
Not a hotbed for fashion manufacturing.
And being the rag rugs are really difficult to sew through. They're thick. Eventually I moved away from that material because it is a cumbersome textile. But then I went off to LA and then I went back to New York and I went to Jersey looking for factories. And over time got to a place where I'm like, I love leather and I love using it as a designer. And so started, finding leather and even myself sewing leather, which was way easier to sew on a sewing machine than a rag rug. Mm-hmm. And so at one point, actually a couple, let's talk about it, and when things go off, a couple from New York reach out to me and they're like, we have a factory in León, Mexico. We found you on the internet. Like, we think we could help you. The wife was in PR and marketing. They had a showroom in New York. So I fly to New York. I meet them. They seem great. They make me a couple prototypes. And I was like, awesome. Next step, let's meet in León. I want to vet the factory. I want to walk the factory floor. And they're like, no. It's like, what do you mean no? Like, the fact that you said no is a big red flag and we'll probably work together. So we go our separate ways. I'm now alerted to the fact that León exists and is a manufacturing capital in Mexico. A lot of tannery.
Where is León in the Mexico layout? What's it near?
It's not on the coast. If you fly from Dallas or LA, it's 2 hours. So it's a short flight. So it's 3 hours total when, I just got to get to Dallas or LA.
Sure.
And from there. And so I take like an assistant. And at the time I had all these I was working with film students from ASU to just capture content. And I was like, hey, if I buy you, I actually had to get them a passport. I'm like, if I buy you a passport and a ticket, will you come down and film the whole thing? And they're like, yeah, this is amazing. So the three of us go down, Cammie, with no clear game plan other than knowing this is a manufacturing capital. But it would be like someone going to New York and not knowing the garment is right. And just be like, we're going to walk the streets. So that's
okay. So time out. So through all of that, because you mentioned several like jaunts here and there, like, were you just flying by the seat of your pants? Did you have a mentor who sort of had some insights into the fashion manufacturing world? Like, where was that all coming from? Like, what was guiding you? Or was it just sheer passion?
I'd say a heavy dose of sheer. A lot of people over the years have come and sat at the Soul Carrier table and had chapters. Mm-hmm. I've always been the one that's there the entire thing. And then sometimes you have the chapters and like, we're not a fit. Let's go our own ways. So there was different probably touch points and stories maybe I've skimmed over, but and it's like, oh yeah, let's try this. And then like, no, that's not what I want. And my vision is more to go here. So yes and no. There's people that have kind of dipped in and have been a mentor, and then the last couple seasons. At that point, the going down to León was, I think it was the fact that they had alerted me to like, this is a thing. And being that I knew that I'm like, I'm going to need manufacturing. I was like, I'm not a maker. Like I'm more like the designer. I have the vision, someone else is going to do the production on this.
And so it's an interesting point too, where someone, a couple in this instance, show up in your life, and even though that relationship didn't continue, it was a catalyst to like lead you to the next step, right? Like I think sometimes we can think when we, arrive at an opportunity or a perceived opportunity, right? Like, oh, it's going to be this. And it's like, no, actually that was just really to give you a heads up that there's this whole place that exists that now you can go explore and find the right partnership. So very interesting that they were just a little.
And it's happened so many times. And then, so I go down to Leon, I find someone who makes the bags, work with them for a bit, but it's still raw. And as I take it to buyers, they're like, oh, your product's still not as finished. So I go down again and meet another group of artisans, and then things get a little more polished, but still not a full-on factory, like still a family. And I'm needing to coordinate. I need to get zippers and leather. And I was like, my dream, it was always like, okay, I want to roll up to a factory and they're like, here's all our zippers, here's all our buttons, here's 100 different kinds of leather. And I'm just picking and choosing, versus these other people. It's very much like, here's all the food, go make dinner, but I got to like bring it to them. So I have an intern go down to Mexico City, and she meets some guy and she's like, Skype with him. He's got connections down in Mexico, like a factory. So I Skype with this factory and they're like, oh, we know your brand. It's like, what? I'm like, we know your patterns. They're like, we've made your bags before. And I'm like, my mind is just like going. I was like, what? It turns out that couple in New York, they were using this factory, acting like it was their own, but really they're just a middleman. It would be as if I was like, hey, Cammie, I've got this factory, I own it. And then upcharging. So we had the biggest laugh over that. And the factory found out the couple were doing that and they fired them. And now to this day, it's called Style Manufacturers. That's who I work with directly. And they're amazing. And full on, their competition is the factory that makes all the Dooney and Burke bags.
Wow.
So they're second largest factory in Leon, and every time I'm down there, like they have a cafeteria, so they feed their employees like breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Like with someone's birthday, and there's like balloons and cake, and that's important to me because I have so many messages and brand pillars that I'm like, I can't have this bag being made in a shoddy place,
right?
And then stand for integrity and authenticity and treating people with kindness. So I'm like, both have to match. It's been really good to know that they're just an awesome group of people. And I love them. I mean, it's just last year was hard because I didn't produce anything and we weren't in contact. And I'm like, oh, I miss, texting.
Yeah.
Go back and forth. So that's my factory side. And then I sell online, but the majority of my business, or where I found my sweet spot, is like high-end resorts and spas, like a Four-Season spa boutique, or Mountain Shadows or Royal Palms. And like at Mountain Shadows, they actually have a gift shop. So gift shops at these, luxury hotels or the spa boutique. And because my message is a lot of spiritual soul wellness themes, that goes very well with the spa industry. And oh yeah.
Well, so I read that's the point that I met you at. You weren't quite in there yet. And I remember you were still trying to identify, like you knew who your ideal customer was, but I just remember that, like, how do I get, where are they? Where are they that I can reach them? And so I remember you were kind of working through that process, as well as like some tweaking and rebranding, because I think I met you when you were still in your old kind of branding phase. So you hadn't gone through that transition yet. And it was cool because I could see where you were going and I could see what you were trying to, the challenges you were trying to work through. And you did it in a relatively short amount of time. I mean, shortly thereafter, then you were like rebranding. And then it seems like you got into, once you slipped into that spa and the high-end boutique kind of industry. Yeah.
I think when I met you, I was coming off of trying to chase golf pro shops.
Yes.
Because I had met someone and she kind of was like a mentor guy. I paid her as a consultant and I'm like, this is so not a fit. Because
I remember you saying that it wasn't a fit. Yeah.
I don't know anything about that industry. And I didn't a lot of it is like country clubs. So I'm like, it's super exclusive. No one's going to be able to get my bags unless you're a member at these high-end clubs. Now, of course, the Four Seasons, it's still exclusive, but anyone can walk up to the spot. There's a difference. And that feels a line where like golf, I'm like, if I was a golfer and I was designing bags.
Sure. I think though what's great about hearing your story from all, is the multiple iterations of it. And that for any young aspiring or newbie biz people that may be listening to this or listen to it in the future, to remember that like it may on the outside, on Instagram with some of these influencer type people look like these things, these empires just have always been. Yeah, exactly. And that it's like constantly tweaking and refining and getting more clear and getting more clarity around, who you are, what value you provide, and like finding that alignment with the people out there who are looking for the thing that you're putting out into the world, right?
Totally. That's it. And when I found the spa market, and then especially being in Phoenix, I'm like, oh, this is a market I can literally pound the pavement and hit.
Yes.
All the resorts that are in my backyard, like just down the street from where I live, and then replicate that in other places. And there's a, not organization, like a member, it's called,
like a trade organization.
Yeah. Thank you. International Spa Association. And it's, every Four Seasons, Ritz-Carlton, Fairmont, Hyatt buyer will attend these shows, and they're phenomenal. I went last year, and it's a week-long trade show in Vegas, and the majority of the people there are like estheticians and massage therapists, and they're learning about the latest technology or whatever and going to wellness workshops. So I was, there's a lot of jewelry, but the majority is like skincare, and I had a booth, and buyers would come, and they loved it because I stood out in that industry.
Yeah, something different.
Listen to one more eye cream, thing. And I was like, oh, cool. Because if I was at a fashion trade show, it would probably be like, I can't hear one more bag pitch.
Oh, right.
But here, I really stood out, and the message so resonates. And then it's one of those things that's like, once you say like, okay, this is my portfolio of where I'm carried, they're like, oh, you're at Four Seasons, you're at Silver Oak Winery, you're at Hotel Yountville, like very high end in the hospitality industry, well known. And so,
yeah, so I have to imagine once you kind of break in, then it's easier to continue to get into more accounts, right?
It's tight industry. So a lot of them will leave I'm at Four Seasons Austin, and the buyer left when on maternity leave. Now she's at Thompson Dallas, which is a Hyatt. And she brought me in because she remembered, so it's a lot of that type of opportunities happening. And
yes. It's so also interesting to think about, I'm sure in your business marketing classes, right? Learning about niching and niching down. And we hear a ton of that, especially like also in the online coaching and online creation, content creation world, right? Like niche. But that's tricky to figure out at first, right? Like there is an evolutionary process. I don't think you just like out of the gate, we see lots of people who iterate their businesses and then they hit on a thing. And also I feel like, and I'd love to hear, I'm sure you'll get there at this part of your story too, like pivoting relating to what's going on in the world. I mean, you completely had to pivot certain parts of your operation during COVID. And so, understanding that it's not a static thing, it's an alive, in motion, constantly evolving organism of itself. Yeah,
absolutely. And that niche thing, I think it's so fascinating, and I 100% agree with it. But I also think right out the gate, sometimes you can be like, yeah, I'm going to do this niche, and that works. And other times through trial and error, you're like, oh, spa, I would not have thought of spa out the gate. And, and then I have people pitch me, it's like, do golf pro shops. And so it's like, I try that, and I'm like, not a fit. And other people are like, you got to do the online game, and we're going to like make you this blogger influencer. And then I'm like, that wasn't a fit for stories, but trying to help me. And like, I pivot and back away from that. And so it's just like, okay, let's try this, let's try that. And then the spa resort market has worked. And I've also found that for my price points, the woman that can stay at Mountain Shadows and Four Seasons and go have a $300 massage isn't going to balk at my prices. Or he's there on a conference, he's like, I'm going to get my wife a nice bag. It's just it's the market I've always wanted without having to play the Nordstrom's Neiman Marcus game.
Right.
That's ever going to be the game I'm out to play for multiple reasons. And
sure.
As a startup,
and it seems like you're a boutique brand.
Yes. And I love that.
Yes.
I really love that.
Yeah. So I'm curious where, and perhaps it just has evolved and developed, the trust in yourself to continue to, and who knows what it looked like along the journey, right? Like not be attached to it being golf, right? Because you could have done that, tapped out, and then been like, well, it didn't happen because I thought it was golf and it didn't happen, right? Like you could have thrown the towel in then. So where did the trust in yourself to be flexible and resiliency, coming into play as far as like, I'm not going to be attached to this being it, and trusting your intuition, I'm assuming, right? Like this doesn't feel right. So talk me through a little bit of what that, in one of those instances, may have sounded like, probably the golf transition and then spa, right? And looking from up here, if there was a map or a blueprint of your business, right, we would see that the golf is what got you the next step closer to spa, right? Like you didn't jump right there. It was another step in the wheel. So like, I'm curious, there's a lot of questions for you all in one, but hopefully you're able to synthesize sort of.
Well, golf, being that a lot of golf is at high-end resorts, so it's kind of like a sister cousin concept. Intuition is such a core foundation and pillar. Like there's a couple of things that I really want Soul Carrier to be remembered for, and I want the content to kind of come through, even though it's bags, the branding of trusting your gut, trusting your soul. It always knows the way, and it's always, I think, the most aligned answer. Like there's so much noise and chatter.
So much noise.
Right? It's like, blah, and just commentary, right? That to get still and quiet and be like, well, what's in here? What's in here? And to come back to that. And one of the last questions my mom ever asked me was, and we're in the car, and she turns around and she's like, where do you want to go? And we're talking about vacation, but that's it. And seconds later, the car spins out of control and the tire blows out and crash, and then that's it. And I'm like, it's pretty powerful. That's the last thing my mom leaves.
Yeah.
And so I want to inspire other people and then be like, ask yourself that question. No one should give you the answer but your soul. This is what your soul wants of where you want to go, because otherwise it's that outside noise and chatter. And then another concept, my friend Cameron, I took him down to Leon with me to help with just strategizing, and he spoke beautiful Spanish. And I had all these ideas, and I'm here and there, and he's like, whew, I'll rein you in, Jen. And he's like, true north. What's your true north? Like, where do you want to go? Which parallels with my mom's question. And he's like, let's square everything up against that. And like, maybe you're not going to get everything done, but you pick your top 2 or 3. And so I've always looked at it as choices, decisions, forks in the road come across your path, because they will on a daily, minute basis. You go, what is my true north? And the true north is that vision, goal, destination. And so I find I can find clarity when I'm like, here's my true north. If I say yes, is it going to move me closer? Is it going to take me on a tangent?
Yes.
The answer could be either way, right? But it's like, it gives you that point and compass. And so, but I've had to learn like trusting, because so often it's like, someone will come in and it's like, golf, or like, let's spend all this money on SEO ads, and then you'll do this. And I'm like, is that my true north? Is that where I want to take this? And when I get still and quiet, there always is a little voice being like, no. Go reroute, Jen. But it's tough, because I think I want to balance those that have gone ahead of me that are wise and know, with being like, just because they've gone ahead doesn't mean it's applicable to my brand and my life and my business. And I'll often trade off or give my power away. Be like, they've got it figured out, so I should be all in with their vision. And I often find that the times I get off course the most, it's when I give my power away. When I think their strategy is the magic pill.
Right.
Give me this tremendous success. And then all of a sudden I'm like, whoa, we got to reroute. Like, it's like flashing check engine light. Like, this is not work.
Doesn't feel right for you. Yeah.
no. And, Tim Ferriss, a big podcast queen.
Me too.
Says that when you, he'll say no to people or change strategies. And he's like, when they get upset, he'll often be like, oh, it's that kind of party? Oh, and I'm always like, oh, actually, even if they do get upset and throw a fit, thanks for showing me, because now I have clarity that we're not going to continue on this journey together.
Right.
I need to part ways as far as working on Soul Carrier. So, but it's sometimes hard because I'm like, why do I have to get all the way to where it's like flashing red light?
Yes. I think you're getting clear. I mean, just in watching from the outside and knowing when we had that initial conversation in 2017, I feel like I can see that you're listening to yourself more and your own voice. That doesn't mean you're not getting professional feedback or insights from mentors or coaches or whoever else is in your camp. But I do remember, I think you were right in that phase where there was someone who had come in and was trying to give you this advice and whatnot. And I could see that you were like, this just doesn't feel right, but this person's an expert and whatnot. And so kudos to you for growth, girl. It's beautiful to witness.
It's hard when you're in the fire, like, ow, but sometimes I think the most beautiful growth is the one where you really have to burn. And then it doesn't serve you.
Well, perfect segue into collectively we were in a year of burn, right? And so how did that impact your business? And tell us about some of the changes that I know that you made, and like, where are you kind of now 2021 early in? So kind of walk us a little through the 2020 stuff that you shifted to, and then where you're at now.
COVID hit, exactly a year ago, I was going to a couple conferences, meeting the people who were like head of all the buying for Marriott and Ritz-Carlton. And it was just like, oh my gosh, this is the new year. I'm going to just crush it. And then I come home from those conferences. I myself think I picked up COVID because I was in New York and South Carolina, and the world just like shuts down. And the friend that I had mentioned, Cameron, who came up with the concept True North, he's since passed. He took his life 4 years ago, but I'm super, super close with his family and their family. So his brother-in-law, CJ, comes to me beginning of March, and he's like, masks. And I was like, what are you talking about, CJ? And he's like, why don't we do masks? Like Soul Carrier mask, and you could do fun sayings and inspirational. And I'm like, okay. And at this point, it was like, should you wear masks? Should you not? Not a ton of people were doing them. So I was like, well, I know enough contacts. I know who we need to turn to for screen printing, all the things, which is also, it was amazing because everything I had done with the bags, like my Rolodex of contacts is pretty deep and rich. And so I'm like, okay, we're going to call this guy to import fabric. We're going to go to this guy to screen print. And we're going to go to this group of fabricators here in town that like have sewing capabilities and sewing machines. And so we just hustled. We got a mask made. CJ had a contact, and we got on the news. We were like on a Fox 10 Good Morning News. And Cammie, it was nuts because we're like, we don't know, this will last a week, a couple months.
Right.
We don't know what's happening with COVID, but the world is shut down. And I was like, let's film at Mountain Shadows just to give them some love because they're one of my best accounts. So we wrap up filming, and I'm thanking the GM, and I was like, oh, wow, CJ, I got a couple sales. I used Shopify for my e-commerce platform. And I was like, I think we got like 10 sales. This is cool. People watched. No more than 10 minutes later, I walked to my car, and I'm like, CJ, I have 500 emails. And it was like, go time. And so we were literally doing just in time. Things would come in, the orders would come in, we'd print everything out, and we'd have to figure out, okay, well, she ordered 10 today, but she ordered 2 yesterday. Do we fulfill the really big order? Oh my gosh. And running around, I mean, we would run to the post office. It'd be like, I'd come home, 9 o'clock was the cutoff. And so I'm like, all right, well, at least they got out today. Come home, do emails, get up early, do it all over again. And it was a mad and crazy rush. And then a couple of weeks later, we got on GQ.com.
Well, and so when did you switch from the cloth masks to then it was like these high fashion leather masks? I was like, look at her just up level that game real quick.
So all along, we're like, okay, we'll do the cloth ones. This is what's needed. but it kind of would be fun and a little cheeky. And I've got all this scrap leather. So that was happening in the background while the big push was the cloth and knowing that the majority of people would buy the cloth and the price points were like $14, $12.
Mm-hmm.
But then I turned to my factory and be like, could you make some? And they're like, totally. So I did a small batch and I have that, but it was really the cloth ones that just
Sure.
And getting on GQ, I messaged the guy on Instagram. We looked up the top trending blogs and like where to buy a face mask. And at the time, GQ.com was like the number one blog that came up. So I found the guy, messaged him, never heard from him, didn't respond. And then a few days later, I was like, we're on GQ because, backtracking where the links came from.
Right.
And that was insanity because we had orders from all over the country, all over the world. I mean, I was shipping to Canada and London, and it was madness, but it was amazing because it worked and we had a ton of sales and I couldn't breathe for those few weeks, but it was also like, it kept me super busy. It was when everyone I kind of felt scandalous because I'm like running out to the post office and picking up fabric and I'm like, the rest of the world is at home. So it kept me really busy and it was good for my like psyche and spirits.
Yeah.
Calm down because the mask.
Also that you were contributing to what was going on, right? Like not only were you keeping busy and your business was still, up and running, you were actively contributing to supplies that people needed. Yeah.
I had a lot of friends that are in the medical field, doctors, nurses, their husbands. And this again was April and they're like, oh, we're just moments behind New York. And they're like, we're already starting to see our supplies tap out. And friends that were nurses were saying, yeah, we're reusing our N95s. We're willing to take cloth ones. And then you're like, this is hitting home in our own backyard. This is pretty scary and real. So to know that I'm like, well, if we can like provide to the general public, like here, buy a cloth mask, leave the stuff for the healthcare professionals and step in with a product that, is really needed. So
yeah,
it was wild, Cammie.
Are you still selling masks? Like, are you still actively?
I have them up, but it's totally, I think the market's saturated and you can find them everywhere. And the need is, and CJ and I knew we're like, this is a limited time thing, but hit it and write it hard. And it was amazing. And then now, towards the end of the year, it's not been drastic, but I'm seeing my resorts come back and they place small orders before Christmas. And then I had individual sales and opened up a couple new accounts. And so that industry is slowly, again, I don't think it's going to be a spike, but like a slow climb. They open up. They're like, okay, we want to bring you back in. And I was like, that's my love. And I want to continue going forward with that and picking up hospitality accounts this year. And hopefully we get the vaccine. And this becomes a calmer side.
Get into getting some business done, right? So besides, is your focus still going to be bags? Is there anything else in 2021 or in the next couple of years that you have in your higher level vision of creative projects that you want to move into? What's that look like?
I would love to, and I feel like this is perfect, like put out in the universe, I've been asked to do public speaking a handful of times, maybe 5 or 6 times, smaller groups, but I was like, I really love this. And I love doing Instagram lives or creating content and sharing that under the soul, because again, I want to inspire those messages about like, trust your soul, ask yourself where you want to go, like have a true north, to speak to those things, to speak to my story about how I got back up and move through these different tragedies that have kind of come across my plate, to do more public speaking. And so maybe this year, dabbling more in just creating content and putting it out there, because I don't think we're going to have conferences and big events this year, but maybe in the next 2 to 3 years, we'll start to see that shift. That's something I'm interested in. And then I just love creating. So I could see creating I had one in the, my accounts is Lake Tahoe Hyatt, just if I could do blankets, because she's doing a lot of outdoor yoga, meditation events. Yes. And I was like, oh yeah. And I have so many messages, or even if I just use my branding, that would be interesting to do blankets. So I'm trying to get those made here, but like the factory I was working with, they had everyone out sick, and then someone had COVID, and so it's been a little bit of an uphill climb.
Yeah, production's got to be tricky.
Production has always been, I've found my way, but it's always been one of the probably biggest hiccups to overcome. Now I feel like it's a well-oiled machine, and back in the day, I would have said, I hate selling. It wasn't that I hated selling, it was just that I wasn't really ready to go sell. Like I feel like it was a half-baked brand and product. So it's like, I'd make an appointment with the buyer. They'd, they'd be like, we love your stuff. Like, we want to order X amount. And then I'd be getting, prior to the factory I'm using now, I'd be getting texts from the group of artisans I was working with, and like, your zipper's stuck in customs and we didn't get the right leather and this broke. And I'm thinking, how can I confidently say yes when the back end is a mess? And too honest and transparent. I can't sell ice Eskimos. I'm just like,
right.
It's not a match. And so I hated selling them, but now my systems are in place. Now everything is in order. I have the tools, and now I can kind of just go out and get accounts, and I love it. Like, I love walking up to Mountain Shadows and Four Seasons and the Princess, and dropping off goodies for the buyers and building relationships and going to these trade shows. So now the selling part, I'm like, oh, it's easy.
Yeah.
I have a product I'm so proud of. I'm ready to put out in the world, where in the past I was like, not 100% there. So
yeah, I think that story speaks to, like, you have to step into it. You have to step into action, right? But then once you get running, the systems and processes, the back end piece, which for creators, I'm a creator too, like you, like, we want to be vision and big picture and playing and in that creative yummy space, but like that's not going to pay your bills and keep your business up and running and grow and evolve and all of the things, right? So yes, I'm learning a lot about like the systems and processes and back ends and trying to like step into like progress over perfection. Like the laptop just fell when my foot got caught on the little headphone thing here, right? Like, it's like, you know what? This is life. These things happen. Oops. Moving on. And the same thing with like, yes, I don't have all of the things that I desire. That will come. And I'm going to be where I'm at right now with the tools I have and the resources that I have, and I'm going to step into it. And so I think, kudos to you for that also. And every step of the way, it sounds like you just used what you had and but it sounds like relationships and connections and the power of collaboration has been really important for you too.
Huge.
Yeah.
And I would say everything you just said, like, yes, amen to that. And like, I have to give a huge shout out. She was my neighbor, and now she's one of my very dear best friends, Andrea and Nelson. So we met because we lived in the same condo complex. And 4 years ago is when my friend took his life, and I was just kind of like, whoa. And Cameron had been helping me with soul care. We did a Kickstarter together. He came with me to Leon multiple times, and we would strategize. And we were, as I look back, I was like, he was like a soulmate, and it was phenomenal. And so his death rattled me, and I was like, ha. And so Andrea at that time was like, had come to me, and she was starting to do consulting. She left the corporate finance world and helping small businesses with operations and processes. And so she came to me, and I was like, and I was also coming off the heels, I think, of the golf her shop. Kind of a lot of catalyst things were all happening at the same time. And so we sat down, and she is an angel and phenomenal. And on the back end, it was just things like, well, Jenn, why are you doing this way? You're like replicating 3 different processes. And her thing was called Streamline Solutions. And in a nutshell, that's what she did. It was just like, whoosh. And then I went and did a rebranding one. She was kind of helping me out. And then I was working with her up until last fall. And then she had twin boys. And then she kind of took time off to raised them, and now her and her husband are doing more like financial estate planning versus just small business consulting. But I'll still call her and I'll be like, oh my gosh, this situation came up. What do you think about this? Like, and amazing. So, and her and Cameron probably were my two favorite collaborations, and the healthiest, the most, there was no hiccup. Other people have been like, oh boy, got it.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's wrap this up. Okay.
Gotta untangle myself, but she is amazing. And to have that, because as a creator, vision, all this and that. And so both of them have been very calm, and they also allow me to be me.
Yeah.
And me where I'm at, and give me the tools where other people, where I go off, I'm like, you're not truly listening or speaking. You're coming in with a vision and a strategy and laying it on over top of me, but this is not where I want to go. And, and it may very well have worked for you or other clients.
Right.
Like, you truly listen, you'll realize this is not a fit. And so now I'm catching myself that I listened to a Brené Brown podcast the other day with Ellen Alda, and she was talking about listening and listening to people's stories. And when people are like, if we interject and like, oh, Kimmy, it wasn't that bad. I'm sure whatever just happened. And you're like, for whatever you just experienced, that was your truth. That was your experience. We jump in and like, whatever, you'll get over that. And so I'm starting to pay attention that business-wise, when people like do that, I'm like, oh yeah, but my experience was it is this, and my experience is my vision is this, and you're not really listening. And since this is a paid situation, right, I'm paying you,
right?
Me, I don't think this is going to work, because, if it's free advice, so that's free advice. But when there's money involved, it's like, oh, I get to drive this bus. So,
well, and it's such a good point too of like, there may be best practices that are general rules of thumb, best practices, but like especially you with a boutique brand, right? It needs to be customized. It needs to fit, you're not a one size fits all big box type of thing that's being mass produced,
So much of my message of like, we're all unique souls. Like, do you let your authenticity shine? And just because your best friend, your sister, your mother chose that path and doesn't mean your path has to look like that. And so it's the same concept.
Right. Right. Exactly what I was kind of telling you before we hit record, right? Where it's like, I was stuck in neutral for so long with kind of launching all of these things that I had. And it's like, and as a creator, you have to strike while the iron's hot, because that energy will go somewhere else and poof, it's gone. So once I kind of let go of like, oh, this doesn't need to look like other people. Like, this can look like whatever it looks like now, and it'll look like whatever it's going to look like later. And I can let myself off the hook for that, right? Like, you can still build a brand and have an identity and leave spaciousness for growth and evolution and things to ebb and flow and shift and change, right?
I love that, because I often say to friends who like have ideas, I'm like, just hit go. You are going to evolve and edit and change. Like,
yes.
Don't stress out about perfecting it, because it will naturally evolve and change, and things will come across your path that you'll be forced to change it. Global pandemics.
Right.
Whoa.
Yes.
So to get so obsessive about making it one thing, it's going to change anyway. So let yourself have some breathing and levity and like.
Yeah. And you've been so good at that. It's been so cool to watch and witness you from afar a bit. So being conscious of our time here, I guess one last thing I'd love to touch base on, because this is something I really want to cultivate as I continue to grow and expand this podcast and some of the other programs and products that I will create in the future, is really Innerspace best practices for creators and people who want to launch a creative project or a business, all the things that you have done. So what does that look like for you today? Because I know you do your inner work, girl. Is it a morning? Do you have a morning practice or an evening practice, or does that kind of ebb and flow? But what are a couple of those things that that are must have, you need to do to keep your cup full first?
I can't say this is a long practice, but the past couple weeks, earlier last year, I had a little bit of a breakup, and it took, it was a real heart wrencher. And so I've been trying to like meditate, like light a candle, meditate, and each day be like, can I do 5 more breaths, and that's been helpful. That's only been since like Christmas. So I always want to stay a meditator, but it's been more like working out. Pre-COVID, it was like I had to go to spin, and spin was my thing. Now with COVID, my studio's closed down, so I'll go on long walks. And I realize I really need them. And often friends are like, let's meet and walk. And if I do that, I still need my own time. I'll go for 2 hours, and sometimes it's music and letting myself cry. Sometimes it's tons of podcasts. Sometimes it's nothing. Like I just want to hear the sound of the crunch. I've been doing a lot of hiking, journaling, and then, love all the books, just taking in self-growth podcasts, and books and therapy. I love.
Yeah.
No problem saying that.
Shout out for the therapists in the house. Yeah.
So good. And I think like what we were saying earlier to kind of wrap it up is like the cap on my growth, the soul care can only go so far is if I keep pushing myself. But if I plateau, maybe I go to a space and there's other people working on it that it could keep growing. But when I go down, it's going to impact the business and brand. So
yes.
Those long walks, which are really, I think, a walking meditation. And now I've been doing actually meditating, and that's been helping. And it's a mixture of praying and journaling. And
yes, all things I love and enjoy too. Yeah.
But yeah, that inner work is so vital.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I think, especially right now, we're indoors more. I mean, some of us are, some people are not, but those of us who are conscious and aware are, also tuning into taking time to do for ourselves. Right.
Yeah. And I think last year was a huge gift. Right. And I always look back and kind of giggled at the irony of like 2020 vision. And I think we got it because light was shed on paradigms and systems and ways of being that did not serve us and did not work well. And there's a whole probably group and community that resisted it. And it's like, this is awful. And it was not a fun year, but it also shed light. And I think that it also was like, oh my gosh, I never used to go for 2-hour walks. And I was waking up super early. It was like freezing cold, and I'm bundled up, and I live near the canal in Arcadia and Paradise Valley, and I'd walk the canal, and I'm like, this is pure magic. And I would never have done this pre-COVID I just wouldn't. I would have gone to spin, which was amazing and served me so well. But things like that, or taking the time to journal, or just sit with the candle for 10 minutes and meditate. It's like,
right.
Indulgent, and now it's like, it's not indulgent. It is necessary.
Very necessary. Yes. Yeah. I think it's so interesting, like the pause button, people have referred to like a pause button being hit, but I think also besides obviously the systems and paradigms, that's a whole nother conversation, but our internal systems and how we operate, right? Like I remember, and I'm also like very sensitive to energies, and I sometimes feel collective energy before it's here. And I remember in 2019 in the fall, I would drive to work, and I only have like a 7-minute commute. And I'm still currently full-time employed, and I love what I do. I work for the community college here locally. But I remember getting in the car and being like, why do we do this? Why do I have to get up and put the face on and the clothes on and get in the car and drive to this place to sit in a room to check email and make phone calls and have some meetings? Like, can't we do this from home? Like, isn't there just the lack of flexibility? And I'm not nothing about my organization, just the whole world operated that way. Like it was only like innovative like startups that were like, oh, we can work remote, and we have an all remote, but most people weren't doing that, or at least for the majority of their staff. Maybe there was a small group of people that were, had some flexibility. But I really remember that I could feel that like crunch of like, why did we set this system up like this? Like I would Marco Polo video message my friend and be like, who designed this? Like I literally was resisting it so hard. And it wasn't the work I was resisting. It was like, why do we do it this way? You know, like your advisors would come in and be like, oh, Jen, you know, why are you doing this the way? Or like if an alien popped down and was like, why are you humans doing this? Why would you do this way? And so it's just very interesting because then that happened and I've worked from home and I've thrived, you know. It's just there's more me time in the mornings. I love having my dogs here at the house. I love being able to connect with them. They're like, I mean, they're not therapy dogs, but they are, right? Like they love up on me all day long and I get to go outside and take them for walks versus having to get in my car and drive back home and then go walk the dogs and then get back in the car and go back to the office. You know, like it just, when you talk through some of it, it sounds like, and I know that there's other people who have different opinions and they love going to the office and that collaboration and connection face to face. I'm probably like one for both. I like it. I like a little of both, right? But just, I love now that has sort of opened up and shifted a bit. And we are seeing that we can operate in ways that we didn't know we could or we weren't open to doing. And so that's another gift that I think has come from.
It just stretches to be more creative and find new ways that like,
yes,
you know, we don't have to be stuck in a certain way. Like, or this idea of like, let's go back to normal. I'm like, what was normal?
I know.
I don't want normal.
The same.
Like, what, you know, yeah, I miss the concerts and certain things and collaborations and big photo shoots. So that I get, but certain things about normal.
Right. Yeah. I know. I just keep calling it the new now. I'm like, we're in the new now and we can do things. And so that's really what I'm trying to, I want to work with new now leaders. I want to work with people who are moving forward. They're not holding on to, you know, old paradigms, old ideas, old belief systems, and we're creating it from ground zero, right? Like we can create whatever we want. And so I love you sharing your story with me and all of us listening. And just, I know it's so inspiring to me and I know it's so inspiring to others. And I am so grateful to know you personally, but also to witness professionally what has evolved for you. And I can't wait to see where you go in the future.
Back to that tagline, where do you want to go? It's so funny because I'm like, oh, I need to ask that of myself. Like I'm trying to inspire everyone else. And I'm like, Jenn needs to do time.
Yeah. I've been having some
want to like preach the most are the ones who have to.
Yes. Well, if you ever want to have a power hour, girl, I'm always game.
That will be fantastic.
Yes.
I'm just so proud of you and your stuff. And
thank you.
Share this and I'll share it on all the channels.
Yeah. So tying that last little, putting the bow on things here, tell everybody where they can find you, find your stuff. And then I'll link it all up in the show notes.
It's literally soulcarrier.com, like soul, like your soul, carrier.com, at soulcarrier on Instagram. That's probably where I'm the most active. And then if you go to my website, I am physically carried at a bunch of Four Seasons across the country, here in the Valley, Royal Palms, Mountain Shadows, Ondas, Princess, in California, Silver Oak, in Palm Beach, EU Palm Beach, Thompson, Dallas.
I want to go vacation at all of your resorts.
Every now and then I'll get invited to do a trunk show. Rates, and it's pretty interesting.
Yeah. A little work perk, right? And so, but if people want to buy online, they can just go to soulcarrier.com.
And I did Cami K, so it's spelled like your name, Cami K Love, and that will take 25% off anything at checkout.
Cami K Love. I'm going to write this down. Cami K Love. I love that. Thank you so much. I so appreciate you. I know we'll be in touch, but I look forward to watching you grow.
Me too. And I want to start doing more like Instagram. I did a couple Instagram lives where I had friends who were makers, candle, jewelry designers, sell, and we did almost like home shopping network meets, how I built this. And I want to do it even, they physically came over, but I'm like, we could even do it like, just jam out and then it's on the their channel and you share your message and
yes.
Art. So let's keep chatting about that too.
Yeah, I'm down. I'm game. I got to create a few more products, but I have a few things we could throw into the mix. Yeah.
So,
All right, girl. Well, thank you so much for being here. And I know I'll be talking to you real soon.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Fantastic.
Okay.
All right.
Thanks.
Bye.
Ooh, is Jenn the coolest or what? What a jam-packed and juicy conversation. I'm super grateful to Jennifer Boonlorn, Empress of Soul Carrier, for joining me today, for sharing her story, and for sharing her wisdom about pivot points, trusting your own vision and mission, and not getting hung up on what the experts are saying. I hope you were inspired by Jenn's story, knowledge, and insights. If you want to learn more about her or to purchase goodies from her gorgeous collection of luxury handbags or accessories, you can find everything at soulcarrier.com. That's SOULCARRIER.com. Jenn was also kind enough to offer a 25% discount for the listeners and fans of this podcast, so just use code CAMIKLOVE at checkout. You can also follow her on Instagram at soulcarrier or facebook.com